7 students were surveyed, and of those students, approximately 56% are unaware of the school-to-prison pipeline. Yet an alarmingly 39% of those surveyed felt that their school's method of discipline was very much unfair. We are Alejandra Borges, Yorkena Porven, Mia Saiz, and we are going to discuss the problem that is school-to-prison pipeline. The ACLU defines the school-to-prison pipeline as the trend of youth being pushed out of school through exclusionary discipline policies and swept into the criminal justice system by the criminalization of normal adolescent behaviors. The National Center for Education Statistics states that Black male students are about 3 times more likely to be faced with out-of-school suspensions. However, this is not due to worse behavior, but from implicit or explicit racial bias on the part of teachers and administrators. Every now and then, clips circulate around social media depicting racist encounters between teachers and their students.
But maybe you don't have good sense because you're sitting here arguing with me and you're making me mad, and I'm going to send you to the office if you don't shut up!
Hey, the next time I hear one of you guys drop the N-word, I'm going to come over there and treat you like one. What?
But what about these situations? Like the one shown, can we not see? Many schools implement a no-tolerance policy. This means that teachers and administrators have no tolerance for rule breaking. This method of discipline does not take into account the act and only focuses on the transgression or offense. State law indicates students must be suspended or expelled for conduct like disruptive behavior, willful defiance of authority, or gross disobedience, sometimes even profanity.
However, most of these offenses are subjective. These offenses are influenced by the student-teacher bias, whether that is an indirect or direct bias, which can be detrimental to the student-teacher relationship. A student that has been consistently excluded based on subjectivities stemming from bias will be frustrated and less likely to want to participate. In more extreme cases, students are transferred to alternative learning facilities, or in severe cases, tried and sentenced to a juvenile detention center. Now here is where the school-to-prison pipeline begins. Once a person is in the criminal justice system, it is extremely difficult to get out. The National Juvenile Justice Network says that 250,000 minors get tried and sentenced as adults every year. Once you're classified as a felon, society rejects you completely. Many jobs will not hire you, thus making your own legal income becomes increasingly difficult. This creates a toxic cycle in which minorities are in and out of jail. FIU professor Carolina Villalba teaches rhetorically constructing criminality. She describes the class as a special topics course that explores how rhetorical narratives can shape our ideas about criminal or forbidden behavior. In the course, they examine criminality as a construct, analyzing ways that legal, social culture, and media rhetorics influence our perceptions of what is criminal. Students in this fall section of the course will also have the opportunity to participate in a letter exchange, with students taking a writing course inside a local corrections facility to gain perspective on what it means to be in the system. Professor Villalba says, "From what I have read, researchers have studied and confirmed that there is a relationship between strict exclusionary discipline measures in schools and increases in instances of arrest, dropout rates, and criminal convictions. Studies have also shown that these strict exclusionary forms of discipline, like suspensions and expulsions, are disproportionately regulated to Black and Latino students. However, there is hope for the future of at-risk youth."
We had the privilege of interviewing Deborah Payne, founder of eStop, a nonprofit organization based right here in South Florida. eStop stands for Eradicating the School-to-Prison Pipeline. Payne began her work when she went to an alternative learning school called Troy and noticed all the kids were either Black or ethnic minorities. If you're not familiar with alternative learning, there are schools where children with severe behavioral issues are sent when they have exhausted all other options. Here's where Payne learns the harsh reality of the system that incriminates Black students. After earning her PhD at FIU, she started eStop, and ever since that day, Payne has dedicated her life and research to eradicating the school-to-prison pipeline.
Schools, and we're going to do restorative justice there. And they kind of knew the research and accepted our proposal trying to have it has to be like a school-wide thing or it really won't work. And so it's kind of gone by the wayside here. I mean, there are pockets of restorative justice, I think, but it's not so much the buzzword anymore. But it is a thing where you there's parts of it, but one of the big parts was to have circles, for lack of a better word, where if somebody gets hurt or hurts somebody on campus or they have a fight or something, then you can bring them together and talk out the details, who did this and what happened, and try not to point the finger, but try to get them to come to some conclusion of how to work it out together, something like that. And so that's part of it. But restorative justice, the way it started was way back with the Native Americans, actually, where that's how they just live life. You know, they don't put people in prison or whatnot at the time when it started. I'm not sure what happens now, but they would just bring the group together, sit in a circle, and make it right. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. It's an awesome thing, but it has to be, I believe, which goes back to teacher, student, and people relationships. The people have to understand what they're doing and why, and then work with the whole group instead of saying, here's what I know and you have to do this and that.
This being said, the student-teacher relationship is crucial. It is supremely important that a teacher's bias does not get in the way of a child's education. Unfortunately, history has only been perpetuated with old-fashioned ideals. From Professor Villalba's point of view, learning about systemic racism is key to learning about history. It is important for educators to have awareness of the ways systemic racism has influenced our educational systems, and to be aware that there are students who have never seen their family's history represented in what they learn in school, or who are frequently marginalized in our education system. To be an empathetic teacher, it is important to remain curious about how our own training or teaching can reflect these inequities. As the banning of books and education continues, it is important now more than ever to keep calling systemic racism out. We must all educate and align ourselves with the right side of history. If more teachers become educated on critical race theory and how systemic oppression works, the student-teacher relationship will have a chance to flourish. But it is legislation like Florida House Bill 999 that prohibits critical race theory in schools. The Florida Board of Governors will provide direction to each constituent university to remove from its programs any major or minor that is based on or otherwise utilizes pedagogical methodology associated with critical race theory, included but not limited to critical race theory, critical race studies, critical ethnic studies, radical feminist theory, radical gender theory, queer theory, critical social justice, or intersectionality, as defined in the Board of Governors regulation, or any major or minor that includes a curriculum that promotes the concepts listed in S1000.05, subsection 4A. The criminalization of education is never okay. This bill prohibits acknowledging racist, homophobic, misogynistic, and xenophobic rhetoric. Why should it be unlawful to study and call out systemic oppression? Why should we not strive for diversity and inclusion? This imposed failure to acknowledge racism, xenophobia, misogyny, and homophobia is the first step to silencing the people's voice. This bill prohibits the knowledge that will provide teachers and administrators the tact to deal with students in marginalized communities, not to mention the severe repercussions school faculty and staff will face if they do have this knowledge and wish to spread it. This is why it is more important now than ever to call out systemic oppression and eradicate the school-to-prison pipeline.